What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to look at US tipping culture and how that got out of hand. And if you're new here, I am Phil. I'm from Germany and I have a wife who is American. So for the last 4 years, I went to the US 3 times. It was my first time in 2019, which was quite the experience. But then we went back in 2021 and most recently in 2023, I definitely noticed that there was an increase in asking for tips and that the tipping overall just increased, or at least that they try really hard. So I found this video. It's by the channel CNBC and it's called Why Tipping is So Out of Control in the US. And it has 4 million views from 4 months ago. So we're just gonna see what they have to say about it. And I have to say quite some things about the tipping culture as well. But here we go.
When was the last time you purchased something and you weren't asked for a tip? Yeah, I can't remember either.
Tipping culture has gotten out of control. I get up to the pay window and she's like, how much do you want to tip? What am I gonna tip you for? I'm in the drive-thru. Oh my God.
Tips have been on the rise for decades. During the 1950s, people commonly tipped 10% of the bill. By the 1970s and 1980s, that jumped to 15%. Today, people tip anywhere from 15 to 25%. According to one 2022 survey, consumers said they tipped more than 21% on average.
So 21% on average, that is a lot of tipping. And I already see the stupid machine they have at almost every counter. They turn it around and then ask you for the tip then and there. But yeah, thinking about it, 21% on top of things, I guess depends on the service and where you tip, but that's just one of the issues. So far, they just said it increased a lot over the last decades.
Nowadays, there are people who argue 20% is kind of a cheap tip.
While the percentage that consumers are tipping at full-service restaurants in the past couple of years has remained about the same, in the fourth quarter of 2022, the number of tips provided at full-service restaurants grew 17%.
So 17% growth on tips at full-service restaurants in Q4 22 from Q4 2021. So in 1 year from 21 to 22, the tips increased by 17%, okay?
Meanwhile, the tip frequency at quick service restaurants such as coffee shops and fast food chains rose 16% during the same time period.
And that is, in my opinion, the biggest issue, or the thing that I noticed now in 2023 the most, is that at quick service restaurants, just takeaway, Starbucks, whatever, I feel like it's still on the rise crazy, because that is the most noticeable thing to me.
15% during the same time period.
What we're seeing now nationwide is something that is known as tipflation. At every opportunity, we're being presented with a tablet that's asking us how much we'd like to tip.
In many cases, not only replacing the old-fashioned tip jars that you could feel good about throwing some spare change into, but actually suggesting tip amounts.
Yeah.
Often, right in front of the employee receiving that tip. Not to mention also your dinner date and the dozen or so people standing behind you in line.
And it's gone beyond just the tablet.
I'm sorry to interrupt this so much, but I'm already boiling inside. As a German, as a European, this is so crazy to me to see. Of course, there's tipping here as well, but this tablet thing, they turn around and then they ask you for a tip then and there before they make your food or your drink. You basically tip in advance, but isn't a tip supposed to be something for good service afterwards? Like, this was exceptional service. Here's an extra $1 or an extra $5. But no, now they turn that thing around and publicly shame you. It feels like you're being shamed or forced like mentally into like, oh my God, I gotta do this now, or I'm gonna look like an idiot, like a douchebag, because the service person who makes your stuff is right in front of you, and like they said, probably just a queue behind you as well, and everybody sees it. It's so big. I hate it. I feel abused when they do that. And thank God they're not doing that yet in Europe. They're still tipping at restaurants and stuff, but this tablet culture, it's just mind-baffling to me.
The other day I was using the Hopper app to book a hotel, and it wasn't until I confirmed my payment that I realized my hotel was $10 more expensive. It turns out Hopper assumed I wanted to add a tip, and I had to go back to a prior page.
Okay, tipping for hotels, sure.
Tipflation refers to not just that we're tipping more, but we're tipping everyone for everything.
You're being guilted into tipping on something that is not technically a service. It's someone simply doing their job.
Yeah.
In those situations, consumers are feeling resentful. Where do you draw the line?
You're guilted into something. So true, man.
TIP stands for to ensure promptness. Tipping may go back as far as the Roman era, but according to most
didn't know that.
experts, the practice likely has its origins in medieval Europe.
Noblemen taking passage on roads would throw coins to the rubble to ensure safe passage. One theory is that it evolved in eating and drinking establishments as a way to forestall envy, that when you're eating and drinking, you're having fun, and the people who are serving you are not.
All right.
Ironically, as tipping exploded in the United States, it became less common in Europe and was replaced with service charges.
While the first federal minimum wage law was passed in 1938, it wasn't until almost 3 decades later when the tip minimum wage was established. In 1991, the federal minimum wage for tipped employees was set at $2.13, which is what
So I'm not fully understanding, but it sounds like there's 2 minimum wages. One for employees that can receive tips, the tip minimum wage, and then there's probably one for employees that don't receive tips, like a factory worker or what. And so they set that lower for the tipping ones because they assume, oh, they get free money anyway, or additional money, call it whatever. So we can set that lower. And this is 1991. That's not that long ago. Like 30 years ago, there was already a strong economy. So that is a amount. I don't know how somebody would live off that. And I guess that's what they're banking on, right?
it remains at as of March 2023.
No, it's still 213? No way. I didn't expect that. They just like established that. That can't be right, man. Please let me know if there's anybody who works actually for $2.13 per hour in the US with the current prices, with the current inflation and stuff like that.
As far as I know, the United States is the only country that exempts tipped workers from having to receive the full minimum wage.
Yeah.
In 43 states,
Damn.
it is legal to pay tipped workers less than the standard minimum wage, because tips presumably make up that difference.
Okay, tipping in 2023. Let's see.
In recent years, you might have found yourself asking, do I tip this barista for pouring that hot coffee? What about when I'm going to a restaurant and picking up takeout? And how much do I
No.
tip that doorman, driver, or dog walker?
When those in the service industry were feeling the brunt during the coronavirus pandemic, consumers started tipping for things they never had before. And the percentage of remote transactions when tipping was an option in which the consumer tipped soared from about 46% before the pandemic to around 86% in January 2022.
What's a remote
If people
transaction?
were willing to tip the person delivering food to their home 30%, why not ask if they'd like to tip when they come pick up?
During the pandemic, business
Because you do the service. Why would they tip if you pick it up? You do the service of picking it up, delivering. And by the way, the delivering still charges, right? There is a delivery fee, so it's already in the price. I don't understand why you would... I understand why you would tip somebody who delivers your pizza or whatever, but if you pick it up, for what? I don't know.
businesses who lost a lot of traditional customers and transactions were looking for alternative ways to make up that income. And if asking for tips was one way to do it, they were willing to try it.
And since then, that ask hasn't dissipated. Another reason consumers say they feel pressured to tip more? They're being asked to tip prior to service completion.
Yeah.
Asking for a tip beforehand is almost like a bribe,
Yeah.
right? I'm afraid not to tip because, well, you do less good work.
Customers might not be concerned
Like we do the joke, of course, every time I go to the US with my wife and we order something, like a milkshake, and it's already $8 and then tax on top, which is also silly. Then they ask you for the tip before they make it, and I'm like, are they gonna spit in it if I don't tip? Are they gonna be pissed at me? Are they not gonna do as nice of a job? The tipping beforehand is so incomprehensible for me. Like, I don't get it. It's, oh my God, it's just asking for, hey, this is the price for this. Would you like to give me more money? For no reason. There is literally no reason for that. If this milkshake is $8, somebody calculated, okay, ingredients are this amount, then I have to pay my workers, and then I want to make a little bit of profit, so it's gonna be coming out to $8. Everything is calculated in there. No sane business would just charge the ingredients price because the resource prices Because then it would make sense to like, okay, now please pay me for the service. But no, everything is calculated in that price. And then they ask you, would you like to pay more? Would you maybe? So it's this much, but would you maybe pay more? And before they make it, oh my God.
About the barista's perception of their tip before getting their latte, but what about the mechanic repairing your car? I don't know about you, but I'm certainly going to make sure to tip them well to ensure my safety.
You're gonna tip your mechanic? No.
Another
Are you gonna
reason
tip on a house
consumers are
buy
tipping more,
soon? Like,
newer
hey, this house is
technologies,
500K. Would you like to
kiosks and
pay
tablets with
600?
3 large tipping suggestions that pop up on the screen in front of you. 3 options chosen by the business.
I have not yet been to the restaurant where they recommend 5, 10, or 15% for quick takeout. It normally always starts at 15 as a bare minimum.
Yeah. And then you have to put in custom tip if you want to put less, and you look like an idiot again.
Sometimes even starting at 20, 25, and up to 30.
According to a 2022 creditcards.com survey, 22% of respondents said when they're presented with various suggested tip amounts, they feel pressured to.
Yeah, $4.14. What he just tipped, $2 is almost half the price. That was the middle option, which I think psychologically we're most inclined to do, right? Oh, I don't want to be the cheap one, but this high one looks expensive, so I choose the middle option. What's $2, right? It's 50% of your $4 whatever drink that is, man. If I see these freaking tablets popping up in Europe, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I get it. If I go to the US, I'm a guest in your country. I think it's the stupidest thing ever, but I can't, you know, like make a big fuss about it, except by doing this video. But if I see them popping up here, I don't know what to do, man. I'm sweating. It makes me just angry already. And I don't know why not everybody's feeling like that. Maybe people are? I don't know.
They use those options as an indication of kind of what the normative range is and feel compelled to tip within that range. So the more you ask, the more you get.
Robert Sanchez manages Eli's Essentials in New York City. One of the business's locations uses Toast, while the other.
All right, let's check this. Would you like to leave a tip? Total $17. So they give you the option for 15, 18, 20, 25%. And then custom tip, you have to put it in if you want to tip less or something, or no tip. Okay.
Uses this. He says the storefront that uses Toast sees more and higher tips.
Yeah, of course.
The Clover
Because you
Square
guilted
and
into
Toast
it.
terminals to a consumer are very easy to use. Big buttons, big areas to sign the tip, an easy way to tip a different amount if you don't like the starting at 20% option. There are others that do it. They're just not as cool looking.
We've come a long way from being able to just throw your spare change into the jar by the cash register.
Yeah.
The new tablets have turned what used to be a sin of omission, I simply didn't put money into the tip jar, into a sin of commission. I have to hit a button and say no tip. I have to actively choose not to tip. Whereas before,
That's a good point.
not tipping was a kind of a passive thing.
Glancing at the tip jar could have also been
have to
a way
get active to
sense
tip,
of how
and
many
now
others
it's
are
like
tipping on that service and maybe even how
You have to
much
be
money.
active to not tip.
Meanwhile, not only can the
I look
tipping
like a
options be
douche.
customized, but the tipping feature can be disabled as well. So it's the merchant's choice to ask or not to ask for tips.
From the business side, it makes employees want to perform better and do a better job.
It's seriously significant. It really pays for the software. You'd be a foolish business owner not to install it based on what the numbers display. Even a mammoth company as large as Starbucks has decided that they need to sink or swim, and the best way for them to do that is to offer the tip screen.
Starbucks rolled out the tipping feature in stores in September 2022.
It's one thing to have a happy staff.
That late,
it's another
okay.
thing to have customers that are feeling resentful. I think it's a calculus that all business owners really need to make.
Okay, so Starbucks started that in 2022. Sink or swim, he said. I don't know. It's a humongous corporation. Their prices are already so high. They must have a decent profit margin. Yeah, I'm not an expert on stuff like that. But then asking, like you go into the store, you order a coffee, they hand it to you, and then just asking, would you like to pay more? It's ridiculous. But to be honest, if you're thinking smaller businesses, you can't fully blame them if they jump on that bandwagon, you know? There's like this new way out there to make 10, 20% more money, or maybe, a little less, but to make more money just by asking. would you like to pay more? That's really what it is. It just asks you if you like to pay more. And if you present them the options, it's just a psychological thing, I think, and people will pay more, most of the people. And I think that's the problem. But I think we lost kind of touch to why we did that in the first place and if it still makes sense. And I think at this point, it's absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. And I don't know how to fix this. You know, I can't blame the businesses for trying. Like if I had a business where my livelihood depends on, I would try too. If I'm an employee, I'd try too because it goes right in my pocket. I don't know. I think we need to create awareness how stupid it is and that people go back to logic, just common sense, dude. This is not common sense anymore. This is really exploiting people. And it's not like inflation didn't affect people. We have less purchasing power basically, and shit gets more expensive. And then this on top is just, I don't know, it's just like the cherry on the top. I don't know. It really, it makes me sad and angry and confused. I don't know.
Do you think that they're somewhat going to start seeing that they're getting lower tips because people are paying tips to so many services, or they're a result of the act of tipping in general?
I went door to door talking with waitresses, bartenders, and baristas, and while they wanted to remain anonymous, they told me it's happening already. With inflation and being prompted for tips left and right, they say customers have already started to tip less and sometimes not at all.
Okay.
A 2022 study found
Makes
that
sense.
17% of Americans are tipping less because of inflation. However, 10% report tipping more. At the same time, more than half of Americans, or 60%, want to do away with tipping entirely.
Want to do away with tipping, meaning they want to get rid of tipping. I mean, that will make sense. Get rid of tipping, just pay a proper salary, everybody's happy.
extent of pandemic-influenced generosity has also gone down. 43% of consumers typically tipped servers 20% or more in 2022, compared to 56% of consumers in 2021. Meanwhile, the average tip for full-service restaurants has gone down only slightly during the same time period. According to Toast, 19.6% in the fourth quarter of 2022, compared to 19.8% in 2021. However, according to surveys conducted in those same years, respondents said they're tipping higher percentages, 21.2% and 18.9% respectively.
It can genuinely hurt the people who truly rely on gratuities for their livelihood. I firmly believe that the tipping invasion we're experiencing right now, I think it's a net negative for society.
And with that tablet at just about every counter, no matter where you go, the question is, where's the tipping point? I'm wondering how long before I'm tipping my doctor after an annual physical.
Yeah.
If you want to seem especially generous after an exceptional meal, you might decide to go big and tip 30%. But it's a cycle. As more people seeking to make a good impression then up their tips to 30%, maybe even 35%, what becomes a generous tip?
I have to believe tips are going to go up from where they are today. But I also think there's got to be a logical ceiling somewhere. I just don't know where it is.
All right, yeah, that is mind-boggling and very upsetting. And in this end statements, I feel like there's very much of this American attitude in there. What becomes a generous tip? Why does there have to be a generous tip? I, as a European, have a couple problems with this in general. The tipping before the service and the food or the drink is being made is absolutely not understandable to me. It's so stupid. Just tip afterwards if it was amazing or not. Then this percentage tipping, I don't get it. Let's say people eat some cheaper stuff and then somebody else orders a more expensive dish. Same amount of work. You bring out that one dish for each one. One is 20 bucks, one is 50 bucks. Now the one with 50 bucks has to tip more because his dish was already more expensive. Also makes 0 sense to me. These tablets at takeouts, I don't get it. At Starbucks, at Chipotle, at something where you pick up your stuff, you shouldn't be asked for extra money. It's just an ask, hey, this is how much it is, and oftentimes it's already expensive, then would you like to pay more? That's what it feels like to me. And by the way, if you don't want to pay more, we'll shame you publicly because there's a big button that basically says, hey, you didn't tip. I won't be like, next step is going to be somebody make a like an alarm or a siren going off after you hit the no tip button, like a boop boop, no tipper or something like that. Let's just force people into it. It makes me really, really upset. And oftentimes at restaurants, they already put gratuity in there. I'm like, what is gratuity? It's like extra money. There's your tip already. I've seen this. There's like 15% gratuity, service fee, call it whatever, already on top of the price without them letting you know, or sometimes it's in the fine print, whatever. And then in addition, they want to tip. It's normal to tip on the actual service fee already, the gratuity. I think it's a really, really bad development that's happening right now in the US. And like the guy said in the video at some point, I think it's a net negative for the industry, for people, for society in general. And the workers also should not be angry at a customer if they don't tip, because if your salary is too low, then you should be angry at your employer and not at the customer, because it's not the job of the customer to pay you. It's the job of your employer to pay you. So it's a topic that really gets me boiling. And like I said in the beginning, between 21 and 23, I think I saw an extremely big increase of all these stupid tablets everywhere. And I really hope they're gonna, I don't know, I hope the tipping point will be reached at some point and it goes in the other direction, because it's just a stupid development. But let me know what you think, which country you're from. That's it for this one. A little bit of a rant. But yeah, tipping in the US, absolutely fucking stupid. Bye-bye.